Hello?
Hi there.
Okay, the research which we used is based around evidence provided by the University of York report, a systematic review of water fluoridation, published in September 2000.
Okay. And that's pretty much it.
That's generally what we've used, it states that it concluded that water fluoridation increased the number of children without tooth decay by 15%.
Okay. So,
but they also reported that found that no evidence of any risk of overall health there was no evidence of any risk to overall health from fluoridation.
The problem with this position is that the authors of the York Review do not agree with the way the government has interpreted the review.
The interpretations, shall we say, of the evidence for the original York Review have been over-optimistic, but then it applies to both sides as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it's very difficult to get an objective summary of information in such a polarised debate.
sure. It just seems funny to me that this is the one thing that the Department of Health pin it on, and it's really, from what I can gather, not conclusive.
No, I would agree. I'm one of the authors. I would say what the review actually established is that we know rather less about water fluoridation than we thought we did, and that's the big surprise. And I think from a sort of public policy point of view, the evidence around using water fluoridation to reduce inequalities in dental health is scanty and unreliable. I think that's I wouldn't be saying anything controversial by saying that. So, it's not a great evidence base on which to take forward a policy. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be an informed debate about whether water fluoridation is the right thing to do or not. I just think that the evidence is very poor in relation to other interventions.
Professor Trevor Sheldon, head of the Department of Health Studies at York University, whom was chair of the group who conducted the review, has criticised the British Dental Association, the British Medical Association, the National Alliance for Equity in Dental Health, and the British Fluoridation Society for misleading the public about the review's findings. He stated, "The review did not show water fluoridation to be safe." He also pointed out that there were no firm conclusions and that more research was needed. It is important to note that the fluoride added to drinking water is not naturally occurring calcium fluoride. It is a byproduct of the chemical industry called fluorosilicic acid. The UK government will not reveal the source of this byproduct. Former BBC producer Chris Bryson explained the process in a documentary called The Fluoride Deception.
Very few dentists are aware that the fluoride in public water supplies is not a pharmaceutical grade product. It is in fact an industrial waste. It's the waste from the Florida phosphate industry. In the 1950s, the Florida phosphate industry was being sued by farmers and citizens living near those plants because of the fluoride. It was killing their cattle, destroying their crops. The Florida phosphate industry today is prevented from having to dispose of its industrial effluent in a toxic waste dump by the device of shipping that in tanker trucks around the country and dumping it in our water supply.
The ethical implications of treating a population without their consent are enormous. The British public have a right to decide whether or not their drinking water is treated with fluoride. Most other European countries have interpreted the science correctly and have not ever risked fluoridating their public drinking water. Studies are beginning to show that there are not just adverse physical effects linked to fluoridated water, but there are also psychological effects. Evidence does appear to show that the pineal gland and the central nervous system's functionings are severely affected by high exposure to fluoride. Those exposed can therefore become more docile and passive due to the distortion of melatonin production. Perhaps this was why chemical versions of fluoride were added to the water in Nazi and Soviet concentration camps. According to the UK Drinking Water Inspectorate, a local public consultation must first take place before any fluoridation can proceed. Get in touch with your local primary care trust and ask them about your drinking water. If you get a chance to attend the consultation, bring as much scientific data as you can and get it on record. The National Pure Water Association, based in the UK, and the American-based Fluoride Action Network both provide evidence that puts in doubt the government's claims. Investigate the science for yourself, and if you feel the government is in the wrong, then take action.
We're developing a society because of all of these different toxins known to affect brain function. We're seeing a society that not only has a lot more people of lower IQ, but a lot fewer people of higher IQ. In other words, a dumbing down, a chemical dumbing down of society. So everyone's sort of mediocre. That leaves them dependent on government because they can't excel. We have these people of lower IQ who are totally dependent. Then we have this mass of people who are going to believe anything they're told because they can't really think clearly. And very few people of very high IQ who have good cognitive function who can figure this all out. And that's what they want. So, you can kind of piece it together as to why they are so insistent in spending so many hundreds of millions of dollars of propaganda money to dumb down society.
In accordance with the principles of doublethink, it does not matter if the war is not real, or when it is that victory is not possible. The war is not meant to be won. It is meant to be continuous. The essential act of modern warfare is the destruction of the produce of human labor. A hierarchical society is only possible on the basis of poverty and ignorance. In principle, the war effort is always planned to keep society on the brink of starvation. The war is waged by the ruling group against its own subjects, and its object is not victory over Eurasia or Eastasia, but to keep the very structure of society intact.
Perhaps the most important principle of all in Magna Carta, and perhaps the time will come when we need it, and that is the principle of resistance to autocratic power by any means necessary. Yes, that's the foundation in Magna Carta, and that's, I think, something that many of us are thinking now.
We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
Just like George Washington gave his warnings about foreign entanglements and things like that, my dad was giving his warning against letting this military-industrial complex get out of hand.
Gradually, by selective breeding, the congenital differences between rulers and ruled will increase until they become almost different species. A revolt of the plebs would become as unthinkable as an organized insurrection of sheep against the practice of eating mutton. Bertrand Russell.
H.G. Wells, Aldous Huxley, Bertrand Russell, and hundreds of other eugenicists constantly bragged about how the establishment believed themselves to be a separate, more advanced species than the common man. Top eugenicists were bold enough to admit that their real goal was not improving the heredity of the commoner, but to further dumb them down so that they could be more manageable. Nobel Prize winner Russell wrote at length about how vaccinations filled with mercury and other brain-damaging compounds would induce partial chemical lobotomies and develop a servile zombie population.